Hello and welcome back to Fluttering Butterflies. My name is Michelle, and for today's video I'd really like to do kind of a shortish review of this book. This book is called Unheard Voices and it's collected by Malorie Blackman, and recently when I was looking in my local library for some collections of poetry I came across this book. This book was published in 2007 and I had never heard of it before I saw it randomly on the shelf, and it was definitely Malorie Blackman's name that drove me to pick this book up. It's called Unheard Voices, and it's an anthology of extracts, short stories and poems collected talking about slavery. There's a foreword from the start by Malorie Blackman discussing about her reasons for putting together this collection, and there's also a historical note towards the end talking about some of the things that had been brought up, as well as having a timeline. This book is told in 5 different parts, I believe. The first part was about capture and transportation. The second part was like a day in the life of a slave. The third part was about slavery, particularly in Britain. Part 4 was heading towards freedom, and part 5 was like the legacy of slavery. And I found all of the different parts to be quite interesting. Some of the extracts I was already familiar with. I'd been familiar with some of the author contributions. There was an extract towards the beginning from Alex Haley's Roots that I was familiar with. There was an extract from a modern book, Cane River by Lolita Tademi, that I had read before. There was an extract from the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, which I found really interesting. There was 2 extracts by Mary Prince, who I believe was the first slave woman who wrote her own autobiography, and that was really interesting. Some of my favourite bits of the book included the poetry. There was poetry by Langston Hughes, Benjamin Zephaniah in particular, that I really enjoyed. And then there were also 2 short stories. One by Malorie Blackman called North, about a slave and her mother who are trying to escape, that turned out to be quite a grim story. And there was also a more playful story by Katherine Johnson, and that was called The Last Words of Cato Hopkins, and I really enjoyed it. I really loved the selection of short stories as well as extracts. Some of them were written hundreds of years ago, some of them were written in more modern times. I really liked that. I really liked that it changed up the sort of tone and feel of the book, having those different perspectives in the book. I thought it gave a great overview of slavery, both in America and in Britain. According to the foreword by Malorie Blackman, this book was published on the 200th anniversary of the British Parliament passing the Abolition of the Slave Trade Act 1807. I had no idea that it had already been 200 years since the abolition of slavery, and she does write that that slavery is still one of the like a really dark area of history that isn't discussed as much. And that by looking backwards we can then move forwards, and I really enjoyed this collection of different stories and of different voices. It was painful to read in parts, for sure, and there was definitely things that I had learned reading it that I wasn't aware of before. So a really interesting collection. It was just over 200 pages. It didn't take me very long to read this book, but it was definitely an emotional read. So that's it for me today. So much for watching, and I will see you again next time.